All right, let's continue. We see that we are rendering different types of content, based on the type of the widget. Right? What we'd like to be able to do now is instead of these being hard coded, perhaps I'd like to be able to have like a drop down, right? And it'll create that particular type of widget, right? When based on the drop down. Right? So let's take a look at that. So what we could do is that right where we have the input field, right where we have this input field, and right here is where we have our button. Right below that button, perhaps we can add a drop down, right? And we can add it using the select HTML element, right? And provide here various options. We can say option, and the option could be that we have a widget type 1. And you can be as descriptive as you want here. Right, widget type 1, 2, 3. You can be very descriptive. The actual value of this select element, by default, it's the value of the text in the option. Right, that's the default, the value of that input, of that field. This field, right? If you select any one of these, the value is the one you select, right? The text. Now, this text typically is for human consumption. Right? So typically, you don't really, from a logical point of view, you don't care about the text. That's only for humans to consume and make sense out of what the option means. But the actual value, probably we might like to be able to use tokens that have very specific value that can be mapped to some value in some database or some data type. Okay, so for instance, so instead of relying on the text as the value of the input field, typically we instead override the default value by applying the value attribute, by using the value attribute. So this one might be widget type 1, right? Something that means something to us. Right, so let's copy those and apply these, and this will be 2 and 3. Okay. Now we have decoupled what the user sees and what they understand, the semantics of the dropdown, and what actually is how it's represented in our particular data model. And here you can be as specific and be very verbose about this explanation of what this does, this particular option does. Right. Regardless, and not being worried on how that is being interpreted in some middle tier. Okay. All right. Excellent. So let's see. We can paint this and make this a little prettier. Maybe this would be a form control. There could be a drop down here. And what we'd like to be able to do is very similarly to what we did in this input field. Right, we would like to be able to grab the value of this select element, right, and populate our widget when we create it. Okay, so let's do something similar. Okay, let's create a local variable. So this will be a widget type variable, and we'll bind it to the low-level DOM node, right, that represents that element. Right. So we'll do the same technique. We'll use ref. Ref will call a function, right, and we'll pass us the low-level DOM element for this select. So here's the node that's going to be passed to us, and we're going to bind it to our widget type. It's going to be equal to the node. Now we're bound to that element. Right? We have that element, so that when we do the click, we could take the value of that widget type and make it as an attribute of the widget that we're creating. Right? We can say widget type colon widget type dot value. Okay? All right. Now we're passing it as we need it. Make sense? All right. All right. So let's try it out. Let's go back here. We have the widget type, and so my widget type 1. Right, so because it's 1, so let's add the widget. Indeed, it is a type 1. So then we can do the same thing. It says my widget of type 2. And let's select the 2 and do add widget. And indeed is adding widget 2 to the list. Yes? Right. Again, based on the this being populated from the dropdown, as opposed to being hard-coded from the initial state. That make sense? Everybody okay? All right. Well, what about once I've added it, how about being able to change it later? Right? Maybe I like to be able to edit it. Right? Maybe edit and change something that I like to be able to change. So let's take a look at that. How we could edit perhaps a type of an existing widget that is already have been rendered. I've already selected that at creation time. Let's take a look at that next.